It's interesting you mentioned how he's different than everyone. I always feel like he is a good juxtaposition to whatever character is there. Sort of, he can be the Don Quixote or he can be the Sancho Panza, depending on the contents of the characters.
Well, yeah, and Danny Danny is the character who is ultimately telling the story. And like I said, sometimes he just blinks in and out. There's only one play where he actually doesn't appear. It was that early play
You know,
features.
that show that you reviewed, Nowhere
Uh,
Man. I feel that in the Danny Wagner universe, some of the more effective ones are like those episodes Father or The Enemy Within, the ones that don't deal with the government agency but just
yeah,
deal with him in a rather mundane circumstance, maybe his relationship with his father, and then you have the specter in the background. Sometimes when you don't know who's narrating the tale,
yeah.
that is an interesting twist. You don't know if it's Dan Schneider or maybe someone else,
Hmm.
and if it's a different kind of memory. That's why I think the later plays, the ones that play with perspectives, those are very interesting takes on it because sometimes the scenes switch and you're not sure who exactly is moving the strings around.
Yeah, and the thing that you see, especially in these plays, even more so than the novels, because I've written 44 plays now in a year and a half, and I've written like 13 novels, close to 20 if you consider my novels a place over a 15-year period. You can see how I'm constantly evolving. I don't repeat myself, and I'm constantly shifting. I'm doing that. Sometimes you might get 2 or 3 plays in a row that seem to be in a continuum, and then bam, I'll do a play that's totally reversed. At some point, I'll go back to doing a long play like my second play with my extended family, and it'll be a more traditional play. But now, after 40 or 50 plays have passed, you'll see a great contrast with let's say if I do a 50,000 word play on my natural family or my adopted family and compare that to the second play, you'll see just how much learning and honing of the craft has gone in between those two plays. And that's the thing that every artist has to do is you can't, I did the total immersion thing, and you can see that in some of these early plays. But if you look at these 4 plays we're discussing, there's not that much of it here. I mean, there are some long exchanges and whatnot, but you can't overuse things because the more if you overuse things, uh, they become old. This is why you often see artists getting stuck in a blue period, or you see an artist getting stuck, oh, I'm always going to be a cynical nihilist or whatnot. You have to constantly change this, that, and the other thing. You can have the plays where, that are humorous. So a play like Janelle's Red Yaya is a fundamentally different play than even some of the earlier plays like Janie Fitz. And if you see, for example, take a look at this play. Danny talks about having sex with the gorgeous niece, but we don't see that. That's totally elided. In an earlier play, if I took a different perspective on this play, having sex with her may have been the center of the play. But what do we see? The only nudity we see in this play is this young girl who's trying to seduce him, and Danny is like, "Put your clothes back on." And then we only hear about her later, seemingly perverse relationship with the old lech, Mitch.
I wanted to ask you about that. When do you think it is, using your own writing as an example, a good time for an artist to play into expectations? Because your plays are always, they'll black out or they'll light up at certain moments when you would get a traditional scene, just like in Ozu's films where he allied melodrama. When do you think there are opportunities to imbue depth in the traditional or expected outcomes?
It depends. I mean, you have to be attuned to something. It's sort of like, imagine if you have, let's say you were a filmmaker and you have a choice of 2 actors. You have 2 very good actors. One is good in one way, one's good in the other way. But one actor has a great singing voice. Now, as you're doing your film, you choose well, before you do, you choose the actor who's the good voice, and say, okay, now I have this in my back pocket. This opens up that at some point you may want to have the character, instead of peeling the apple like in the end of Late Spring, Maybe the character is in a depressed moment and can sing better. Or the actor who doesn't have the good singing voice, if they start singing, their bad singing may add to a scene later on. So you have to just be aware of the possibilities and listen, just go with your instinct at that moment. And it could vary. There's no one right thing, because what's right for one play, or what's the advice, for example, at the UPG that I give for one poem that was written by, say, Bruce Ariel, would be totally wrong advice if I gave it to Don Moss.